Welcome. My name is Sunny Chowdhury. I'm manager on the solution architect team for Buy with Prime, the latest e-commerce product from Amazon.com. On stage with me, I have the wonderful Mr. Zubin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zubin Sahajwani, Senior Solution Architect with Buy with Prime team. I've been with Amazon for more than a year now. Since joining Amazon, I've done a lot of work with prototype building and providing expertise to various technical customers to accelerate their integration with Buy with Prime.
And his co-conspirator, Marcel.
Hi, my name is Marcel Mantovani. I'm a solutions architect with Buy with Prime team. I've been with Amazon for about a year now, and my main responsibilities is API prototyping and technical accelerators.
Great. So, if you are a developer, technical architect, or in product engineering, and you're looking for ways to accelerate your product development journey, you're in luck, you're in the right place. Because today, we're going to talk to you and tell you about exactly how the power of prototypes can be used to accelerate your product development journey and also connect the dots between the customer voice. Today, we're going to dive into some of the key learnings from our year and a half serving the Buy with Prime product. Specifically, we're going to talk about the power of using many of the AWS services you are likely all familiar with and know really well to build agile prototypes and to build a technical strategy that leads to a truly customer-obsessed product. So here's the agenda. I'll introduce our service, Buy with Prime. I'll talk about our customers and some of the partners that we work with. I'll then turn it over to Zubin, who will discuss some of the patterns and practices that they've observed over the past year, some of the prototypes they built. He and Marcel will dive into the prototypes they've built. And lastly, we'll save some time at the end for you to pepper these two fine gentlemen with some really difficult questions. So please take notes and stay prepared. Awesome. Okay, so by now, hopefully we're all well familiar with Amazon Prime. But for those that are uninitiated, Amazon Prime is a subscription service on Amazon.com that, amongst other benefits, allows fast 2-day or less shipping, an easy customer returns process, and convenience and reliability that you've come to expect and learn to love from Amazon.com. Since 2005, Amazon Prime has been built focusing around three primary pillars. Trust that the transaction is from a verified merchant and that the transaction is secured. Reliability, that with a high degree of confidence, the package that you've ordered will arrive at your doorstep within 2 days or less. And convenience, that if you were unsatisfied with your purchase, that you'll be supported by a world-class customer service experience that Amazon is now famous for. Buy with Prime takes that same Prime experience and allows companies, large and small, around the world, to externalize that and use that same service and offer it on their own sites. I'll pause to illustrate the vision. So imagine a world where you're shopping on a site, one of your favorite brands, so consider Epic Water Filters or Bossy Cosmetics, if that's your thing. As you check out, you have the option of choosing an Amazon Prime fulfillment, where 2 days later, a blue van shows up to your house and delivers a package from that brand. It's super powerful. It should come as no surprise that a service like Buy with Prime requires a significant level of orchestration and engineering to bring to market. Our target customer was pretty unique, and I'll walk through those now. So to really understand our product and our customer, it makes sense to kind of walk through the different personas that would interact with Buy with Prime. So we'll start with the right-hand side of the screen, the merchant. The merchant is the Buy with Prime primary customer. The merchant is an organization, either a large enterprise customer or a small solopreneur who's managing and operating their own e-commerce site. They will typically come to Buy with Prime, and with 3 short steps, connects the Buy with Prime to their Seller Central and Amazon Pay, and they'll be able to offer the Prime experience from their e-commerce platform. Next is their customer. Their customer is the shopper. The shopper is typically enrolled in Amazon Prime, and they're familiar with the Prime experience of shopping on Amazon.com and a customer service experience that we all know and love. And lastly, arguably my favorite persona of the three is the developer. Developers, with every other service at AWS and at Amazon, as you can imagine, we now enable programmatic interaction with Prime, which basically opens the front door to developers. Developers in this context are essentially third-party developers, such as many of you in the room, who would look at a service like Buy with Prime and want to compose it into other services or be able to interact with it in a programmatic manner. There's a plan to essentially allow that programmatic interaction through a subset of APIs. To truly build a composable service, and one that you can interact with programmatically, our team had to work really diligently to pressure test our ideas with a deep sense of empathy. And we wanted to understand really deeply what the developer experience would look like as we shaped our services. And to do so, we essentially embarked on this strategy where we invoked the ability to use prototypes. Let's dive into how we did so. And to do so, I'm going to turn it over to Zubin.
Hello. Thank you, Sunny. Wow, Buy with Prime. Isn't that amazing? All right, let me take you further into this journey, closer to prototype, where I will show you what drove us to build this prototype, how this prototype helped us to close the gaps, capture the much-needed feedback, and better shape our product roadmap. By leveraging AWS managed services, how easy it was for us to build this prototype. And finally, a demo, where I will show you within few minutes, you can deploy entire infrastructure of this prototype in your own AWS account. So let's jump into it. When Buy with Prime team first set out to define our product vision, we found ourselves in a position where we had to quickly study and learn an industry that Amazon has been leading for years. Our vision was relied heavily, not only recruit developers, but as we quickly discovered, we have to learn from them. So we leaned into it. We set goals to build a product that was informed by developers' feedback on every step of the way. We have started brainstorming for ways to gather meaningful feedback rapidly. We looked for innovative ways to have developers build against the integration with Buy with Prime, independent of challenges being presented by product and engineering lifecycle. We needed a way to set wings in flight and safely create a flywheel of developers' feedback to deliver best and most customer-centered product. So where did we land? We knew in order to get feedback on our APIs, we needed to release those APIs for developers. Developers needed those APIs in front of them. But we also knew releasing those APIs that are frequently changing would not be a good experience for them and wouldn't be a good opportunity for us to capture the feedback. Feedback? Let's emphasize a bit on a feedback. Why feedback is so important for us. Customers are central to everything here what we do at Amazon. When we are at best, we evaluate trade-offs and shape our product with end customer experience in full view. When we are developing a new product, we look for an opportunity to engage early stage of product development lifecycle, to provide the feedback and collect feedback more often. We have learned that soliciting feedback from customers gives them deeper sense of ownership. For us, a more engaged customer means we can leverage their industry expertise and insight to better shape our product roadmap. Now, in order for us to better shape our product roadmap, we have to engage with the right developers community, capture the feedback at early stage of product development lifecycle. How did we solve that? First, we identify the customer and their challenges and work backwards from their challenges. When Buy with Prime service was in design and implementation phase, the developer community we wanted to engage was waiting for us to release those APIs. Meanwhile, our engineering team was effectively building those APIs based off a closed circuit feedback, reviewing design decisions internally with other Amazonians. That kept us up at night. In order for us to truly build a customer-centered product, we needed to get builders building. We needed to create a mechanism to capture the feedback. So, how did we do that? I'm glad you asked. We started building prototype. Our thought process was, if we could provide prototype Buy with Prime API version in developers' hand, they would just not gain insight from day one. They can kickstart their development journey. So, what is prototype? By definition, it is a high-fidelity model of a service. It's a small, agile artifact that is purpose-built to model our technical pattern. It gives developers something to take for a spin. From developers' experience, developers get all kind of feedbacks on those prototypes, and they get to review their integration pattern with the help of prototype. Most importantly, they can plan their roadmap with high confidence estimate. There is a great saying, if a picture worth of 1,000 words, then a prototype worth of 1,000 meetings. So, we have built two prototypes, GraphQL API Accelerator and Blueprint application. In the interest of time, we'll stay at 200 level to discuss our approach. We have built GraphQL API Accelerator using AWS App Sync service that are modeled our Buy with Prime APIs. We have hydrated this approach using sample payload and simple CRUD operation. Blueprint application. Marcel is going to talk about Blueprint application in upcoming slide, but in a nutshell, it accompanies GraphQL API Accelerator. It provides code sample on how to interact with GraphQL APIs. It is fully purpose-built, node containerized integration. So, you may ask why we built GraphQL API Accelerator. Why we concluded we should invest time and effort building GraphQL API Accelerator. If you remember goals from our initial slide, we needed to release APIs for developer fast. That is the main reason we built GraphQL API Accelerator. Our thought process was, if we could provide lightweight Buy with Prime API version for developers, they would not only just gain insight, they would kickstart their development journey. Our prototype strategy was intentionally lightweight that allow us to iterate at much higher cadence with better agility than traditional API model, but stay within close proximity with the actual API design. Our best bet was, if developers were able to build against our GraphQL API Accelerator, and Accelerator were high-fidelity schematic representation of actual APIs, and then when prod APIs are available, the cutover time would be minimal, resulting quicker time to the market. So essentially, this GraphQL API Accelerator comes as a CDK package that unpacks schemas, payload, sample data, and any new feature where we are looking feedback for. So let's understand what AWS services we have used under the hood to build this GraphQL API Accelerator. So at a high level, this GraphQL API Accelerator provides 3 endpoints, 2 RESTful endpoint and 1 GraphQL API endpoint. If I go from top left to down, the first endpoint is auth REST API endpoint. Let's spend some time on this. So this is constructed on using Amazon API Gateway, Lambda function, and DynamoDB. So we are using multiple resources on the API Gateway. Like if you are looking for a new token, if you are looking for a refresh token, or you just want to redirect your user to some other URL. So those resources we have configured at the API Gateway. API Gateway here acts as a proxy, passing all the requests as it is to Lambda function, where we have written logic, which determines what user is trying to do. If user is looking for a new token, let's for sake of simplicity, user is looking for a new token. So when Lambda find out that user is looking for a new token, it fetches the token from DynamoDB and sends the response back to the developer. So that's how entire flow works here. The second API, which is again a RESTful API based off Amazon API Gateway, is a webhooks API. This is a asynchronous API. So what it does, when request sends the request to API Gateway again acts as a proxy in this case and sends the request to Lambda function where we have written a logic which determines what user is trying to do. So in this Lambda function, we have pre-populated multiple events, order updated, order created. So for simplicity, let's understand order created event. So when user hit the URL with the order created event, it goes through a API gateway to the Lambda function. Lambda function will determine that user is looking for an order created event. It gets that event JSON file, which is already pre-populated with the Lambda function, and send that file to the event bridge. So now, as a developer, I have to create an event bus and an SNS topic to make sure that it delivered to a desired location. So once I connect event bus with this event bridge and subscribe an SNS notification, I would get events delivered to my desired location. So we are trying to mock the same thing when you place an order on any website and you get an event or you get an order placed email in few seconds or a minute. So we are mocking the same thing with the webhooks API. And the final one is GraphQL API, where we have used AppSync service. Since AppSync service is fully managed service, we don't have to worry about all the other things. We were just focused on the schemas, resolvers, and authorizers. So as you can see, there are two resolvers we have configured. So for AppSync provides inbuilt features to create your own resolvers. You don't have to write much of a code. It's VTL, Apache VTL comes inbuilt with the AppSync. So for simplicity, like for simple queries, you're looking for query with the primary key or partition key, we have used VTL-based resolvers that just fetches the data from DynamoDB and delivered it to the user. But for complex queries where we are using filters or mutations, search operation, we have used Lambda function as a resolver. So Lambda function transforms the request and create a query, send it to DynamoDB, get the response, transform it, send it back to the user. Now you are also seeing authorizer. So AppSync would not work without authorizer. So authorizer is used to make sure that all the authorized requests are allowed to make a call. So if you are not passing any token which is required to pass with every call, then it will not be allowed to make a call. All right, let me share perspective like how far we can go with this GraphQL API accelerator. So as you know, GraphQL API accelerator is available for developers. They can use it. So next step is understanding how well developers could use it so they could get most out of it. Let's just say they have installed and running in their own AWS account by running different queries, mutation. Once they are comfortable with their functionality, their next step is start developing their integration model. So now we are at the develop stage where they begin their development against the GraphQL API accelerator. As I told in the previous slide, GraphQL API accelerator closely aligns with BWP201 APIs. So it provides the similar end results. Now, once they are ready for testing, they test with their business use cases. Still, they are using GraphQL API accelerator. Isn't that amazing? Finally, the important stage where developers are ready to sign off their integration model, where developers are ready to promote their environment to higher, such as pre-prod. They would simply cut over to prod URLs with minimal code changes and continue their remaining testing with the real endpoints and be ready to the launch to the market. All in all, GraphQL API accelerator not only provides developers quicker time to market, but gives them a flexibility, agility to develop their APIs. Now, moment of truth. Let me show you how easy it is to deploy entire infrastructure in your own AWS account. So on the screen, you are seeing a configuration file, which allows you to modify the stack name. You can see the version. You can use your own profile, account number, region. So everything you can manage right here. You don't have to touch anywhere in the code. The way we have created this entire CDK package is once you modify everything here, you just hit the command CDK deploy, That's it. It will start provisioning all the infrastructure in your own AWS account. So you see on the screen, within few seconds, the entire infrastructure is created with 3 endpoints. So one is AppSync endpoint, auth endpoint, and events endpoint. Now let's look at on the CloudFormation. Since CDK uses a CloudFormation to deploy your infrastructure, let's look at the output of CloudFormation. So in the output section of CloudFormation, you would also get to see 3 endpoints. Now you just have to grab those endpoints and start developing your integration model. So you would see AppSync endpoint, events endpoint, and auth endpoint. Now let's take a look on AppSync console that how we can run different queries and get the desired result. So let's go to AppSync console. As you can see here, AppSync has created one API for us with the auth mode Lambda function. So if you go in the settings, you would see that we have used a Lambda authorizer, and this is an API URL which is publicly available. You can use it. And here it shows that we are using Lambda authorizer just to make sure that only authorized requests are allowed. So this is the Lambda authorizer which AppSync has integrated with in the US East 1 zone. Now let's take a look on the query part. So from the AppSync, once you enter the token, then only you can see all the queries, mutation operation. So let's enter this token here on the screen. And once you enter the token, you can see that what queries we have already been deployed. So let's take a look of single product query with the product ID, and we are trying to get few of the details. So as you can see on the screen, we get its prime intended price. All these dummy data is already included as a part of CDK package. So user doesn't have to do anything. So this is a single product query. How about we run one single order query? All right. So with the single order query, we'll run the same structure. We have already pre-populated what information we are looking for as a response. So in the single order query, we just hit the single order query, and it will give us the response. So this is how you can run this entire deploy this entire infrastructure in your own AWS account, run queries, mutation operations. You don't have to do anything else. So you have seen CDK magic. Now let's understand a bit what CDK does, how CDK has deployed the entire infrastructure in your own AWS account. So if you see on the screen, you just hit the CDK deploy. But in the back end, CDK has deployed the DynamoDB tables first. That's the empty table. Those are empty tables. Now, after that, CDK has started deploying custom resources backed by AWS Lambda. So that Lambda pre-populate the DynamoDB tables with the data. So we have added dummy data in the CDK package that gets added in this second step to DynamoDB tables. Now DynamoDB tables are having full of data, order data, product data. The third step comes where we have creating different permissions, IAM roles, policies, just to make sure that all the services can interact with each other seamless. And then we created a Lambda authorizer, just to make sure that proper authorized requests are allowed. And finally, a resolvers. As you noticed in the previous slide, we have created 2 different resolvers, Lambda resolvers, VTL-based resolvers. Now, finally, AppSync. Once AppSync gets created, it creates a public endpoints. It's integrated with all other services, like resolvers, authorizers. It uses all the permission required to interact with all other services. And finally, a DynamoDB table. Just to summarize, prototype helped us to capture the feedback from various customers. With that feedback, we are able to prioritize high-value feature, deliver elevated experience to the market quicker, be able to adopt and adjust faster. By leveraging AWS managed services, we are able to build GraphQL API accelerator that is fault tolerant, scalable, and ready to operate efficiently and more securely. Now, my awesome friend, Marcel, is going to talk about Blueprint application. Marcel has worked on this Blueprint application from day 1. He has also contributed in many GraphQL API releases for the customer. Marcel will explain you how Blueprint application accompanies GraphQL API accelerator and how easy it is to deploy and operate at your own platform. Marcel?
Thank you, Zubin. Thanks for introducing us to the API accelerator. Getting this API accelerator into the hands of the developers solved the problem of giving them access to the backend APIs. Once we started giving these accelerators to the developers, what we heard from them was that they weren't blocked right away, and they could start writing the integrations. The next chapter here is all about their experience and how they perceive our APIs. So if we think about all the things that they might need to write the integration with us, giving this access allow them to run queries and mutations, get some data back, and then proceed with that. But is that endpoint everything that's needed to get a truly great developer experience? This is what we need to find out. One of the most significant leadership principles that we use to shape the way we think in Amazon is customer obsession. And we measure customer obsession by our ability to solution and keep full view of the customer experience, and then look around corners for the next challenge they would face. In this journey, the immediate customer challenge was API availability. Builders could not start building. And the immediate challenge to our internal team was the ability to collect meaningful feedback about our product. In true customer obsession form, we looked around corners and into the developer experience with our APIs. And we found out that they were spending too much time building foundational parts of the integration. And that was a customer experience that we needed to improve. So we went back to the drawing board and dove deep into that experience. As developers started building against our APIs using that accelerator, we've noticed that they were building similar components of the integration. And also similar components like authentication, catalog backfill, just to name a few. And also the complexity varied across the community greatly. So these were the next customer challenge that we wanted to address. We wanted to find a way to reduce ramp-up time and overall engineering effort in building those basic features. Of course, we had documentation of both the API accelerator and our real production APIs. However, we wanted to do more to the developers than simply giving them code samples in a document format. So why not writing an application ourselves that contains those basic features? This is when we built an application called Blueprint application. The Blueprint application contains functionality for dealing with auth tokens, receiving events from webhooks, as well as some other common e-commerce domain capabilities like read orders or update price of a product. One key tenet of the design, we wanted to make the application generic enough so not to make any assumptions on business logic and use cases, yet specific enough to implement the APIs and allow developers to use them as reference in the integration. The main objective of this application is make it simple for developers to understand our APIs. So because of that, we were very intentional with our technical choices. We chose only prevalent technologies such as JavaScript, React, and Node.js Express. We even went further and containerized the application to make it really platform agnostic. The backend you see here on the diagram can easily be configured to point either to the API accelerator. In this case, we'll get mock data in return. Or it can point to the production endpoints, given the proper access and permissions are granted. How exactly can an application like this help developers design and develop their own integration with us? It actually helps in several phases of their life cycle. Starting from the exploration phase, and that's when they are simply starting or just starting to learn about our products and getting the first contact with our APIs. In this phase, they'll get a copy of the Blueprint application, install, run, and try some test cases. Another phase that's very important is when they're planning the integration with us. During this phase, they would look at the Blueprint code, they would look at the code, and start making the correlation between the tests they're running with the actual code performing those activities. The fact that they can see code leads to more precise effort estimation, which is a key advantage. The developers you're writing APIs to, they also have challenges of their own. Shifting priorities, changing budgets, resource constraints, you name it. The fact that their estimations are made with a higher level of certainty can make all the difference to both of you and them. The next phase is test. Developers would want to test a few things. They are validating their understanding about our APIs, or they wanted to try a proof of concept of their own integrations. So they have the code, they can just go make some changes and try out the specific use case. Which leads to the next phase, which is the development phase. At this phase, developers are hands-on. Them and their team are hands-on writing their own integrations, and the choice is up to them. They can keep the prototype code handy and just reference whenever they need, or the Blueprint code can be forked and become the base of the application that will evolve into real integration. Lastly, commit, deploy, and run the integration, which is the ultimate goal. Deliver a fully functioning integration with our APIs. With the help of our prototypes, developers would reach this phase quicker. Pretty neat, right? So I have a pre-recorded demo of the application in action, so let's dive into it. So here's the configuration file for the application. This is where we put the AppSync API URL. You can change whenever you get the new URL. That's where the production point will also come, just to point the application to the URL. Once that is done, we can start the application. It's a Node.js Express application, so I'm running this from a local computer, and likely the same approach that many developers would choose the first time. So once that configuration is done, we can go to the command line and just start the application. After a brief wait, the web browser should load on localhost, and we should see the main landing page that comes with the preset options of menu that are common among our partners. So this application, this web page, allows us to choose a few options. So if we click on products, what will happen is the page is sending a request, a REST request to the backend Node.js running on this computer, which in turn will trigger a request to the backend API. And what we have here on this web page is just a representation of the mock data to help developers visualize the mock data. The cool thing is that we can flip to the code and take a look at the code response behind that request of both the page. I'm going to show here, that's the React function, that's the JavaScript function calling the backend Node.js. And we can go back to the backend Node.js and also look at how we wrote that query, the GraphQL query, to fetch that product's information. As you can see, we put everything very simple, easy to understand in one location so that developers don't need to scatter. They have other files which comes with this application. They'll be able to scan through it on the left side. We're not going to go through all of them right now, but we can look at the query and what fields are being requested. So let's go back to the browser and try another option. For instance, if we go with orders, again, the same thing will happen. The page will send a request to the Node.js, which will trigger a request to the backend APIs, and the page just simply shows the mock data, again, for easy understanding and visualization. These are all mock data and obfuscated, so this is not real product or not real orders as well. So back to the code, we can look at the query again and what is being requested, and then take a peek into any needed input fields or what the structure of a GraphQL query in our API would look like. This approach of communicating concepts through code appeals better to developers that do not need to read through pages of documentation instead. It also allows us to promote some best practices, such as dealing with auth tokens, error codes, and retries. Most importantly, it gives developers actual APIs, and so they can understand the APIs with data, and then apply those learnings in designing and writing their own integration. When paired together, our two prototypes give two very important things to our developers. Number one, an endpoint that actually responds with data. And number two, sample code to simplify and accelerate development. It turns out that our bet paid off. As we learn more about our product and continue to collect more meaningful feedback about our product, we were able to continue engaging with developers to write integration with us 6 months ahead of API readiness. Many of our developers were code complete, with the exception of pre-flight testing, instrumentation, and cutover, weeks before we were able to expose BWP Prime APIs to them. Additionally, our blueprint strategy meant a 30% reduction in foundation effort. So what did we learn from this? Well, first and foremost, we learned to culturally work backwards, prioritizing customer friction point. We also learned the power of iteration. The old saying, perfect is the enemy of good, served our prototype strategy really well. Initially, our prototypes were super scrappy and unrefined, but as we continue engaging with developers with them, we met on common ground and iterated over. And after several iterations, we landed on a truly customer-centric approach to innovation. Lastly, but certainly not least, our choice of leveraging AWS managed services gave us the ability to build reliable, performant, and efficient prototypes, and also respond to developer feedback with agility. So there you have it. Now you too can go into the world and apply the power of prototypes to bring the customer voice into your product vision. If you're interested in learning more about BWP Prime, please check out our other sessions. We cover topics from prototypes to headless to working with partners. We also have demo theaters where we will share our widget and installation process. Lastly, go ahead and scan this QR code and be part of our interest list. We get future news about our product. I'll invite my fellow presenters to the stage now. We're going to open for any questions that you have. One last request, please. Don't forget to fill up the survey after that. Thank you. I think I have a question over there.